the fragments of yesterday. The bell above the door to Mercer Designs chimed softly as Vivian finished arranging the color swatches for her afternoon client. October in Portland brought early twilights and a perpetual mist that softened the edges of the world outside her shop window. She'd always loved fall until it became the season Julian had walked away. "Mom, you okay?" Penny stood in the doorway to the back office, her dark curls pulled into a messy bun, sketchbook clutched against her chest. At 16, she looked more like Julian every day. Same thoughtful brown eyes, same furrowed brow when concerned. "Just lost in thought, honey." Vivian smiled, tucking a strand of auburn hair behind her ear. "How was school?" Penny hesitated, shifting her weight. "Dad called again. He's found an apartment near Franklin High. He'll be here next week." The color swatches slipped from Vivian's fingers, scattering across the reclaimed wood table like autumn leaves. 7 years since Julian's confession. 7 years of rebuilding her life from the ashes of their 15-year marriage, brick by careful brick. "That's sooner than expected," Vivian managed. "He wants to see us both," Penny said carefully. "He sounded different, Mom. More, I don't know, present." Vivian nodded mechanically. Julian had always been charming, the brilliant investment banker with the disarming smile. Even during their divorce, when the evidence of his affair with his colleague became undeniable, he'd been persuasive. "I made a mistake," he'd said. One terrible mistake, but it wasn't just one. It was months of lies, of coming home late, of growing distant while Vivian blamed herself. "Your art showcase is Thursday," Vivian said, changing the subject. "I've invited Olivia and Richard." "I told Dad about it too," Penny admitted, eyes downcast. "He said he wouldn't miss it." The shop phone rang, saving Vivian from responding. As she took the call from a client, she watched Penny retreat to the small studio space they'd created in the back of the shop. The girl had her father's talent for transforming spaces, seeing potential where others saw only walls. That evening, after closing the shop, Vivian sat alone on her apartment balcony overlooking the Willamette River. Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Dinner tomorrow? I miss you." Marcus was everything Julian wasn't: steady, transparent, uncomplicated. After 6 months of dating, he represented the safe harbor Vivian had craved. Yet she hadn't invited him to Penny's showcase, hadn't mentioned Julian's imminent return. Her phone buzzed again. An unfamiliar number, but she knew instantly who it was. "Vivian, it's Julian. I know it's been a long time. I'm in town next week for Penny's showcase. I'd like to talk beforehand if you're willing. I owe you that much." The city lights blurred as tears filled her eyes. Not from love or longing, but from the sudden realization that despite everything she'd built, her business, her independence, her carefully constructed peace, Julian still held the power to make the ground shift beneath her feet. She didn't respond. Instead, she watched as raindrops began to pattern her balcony railing, each one reflecting a fragment of the life she'd pieced back together, wondering if it was strong enough to withstand the coming storm. Weathered soul's Julian Mercer stood at the window of his sparsely furnished apartment, watching Portland's persistent rain blur the city lights. 7 years ago, he'd left this city in disgrace, a successful man who had destroyed everything that mattered through his own selfishness. The small suitcase on his bed remained unpacked. After living out of hotels and temporary accommodations for so long, the concept of home felt foreign. His fingers traced the edge of a silver-framed photograph. Penny at 9 years old, gap-toothed and beaming beside a sandcastle. It was the last family vacation before everything fell apart. "You don't deserve them," his therapist had told him 3 years ago, when Julian first expressed wanting to reconnect. "Not yet. Maybe not ever. That's not for you to decide." Those words had been the catalyst, not for winning back his family, he'd long abandoned such entitlement, but for becoming someone worthy of their forgiveness, whether it came or not. The corporate job in New York was gone, sacrificed during his darkest days of alcohol and self-pity. Rock bottom had come in the form of a hospital room after a night he barely remembered. No one had visited except Thomas, his college roommate turned mentor, who'd offered him a lifeline: sobriety, therapy, and eventually, purpose. Now Julian worked with Thomas's foundation, helping at-risk youth through financial literacy programs. The irony wasn't lost on him. The man who'd once valued profit over people now finding fulfillment in service. His phone buzzed. "Penny, Mom agreed to coffee. Tomorrow at Riverside Cafe, 10 a.m. Julian's heart raced. Vivian had always loved that cafe. He wondered if she still ordered the same drink. Chamomile tea with honey, never coffee despite owning a shop named after the brew. He wondered about 1,000 details that had once been as familiar as breathing. The next morning, Julian arrived 20 minutes early, choosing a table by the window. When Vivian entered, he almost didn't recognize her. Gone was the long hair he remembered. She wore it shorter now, sophisticated. Her eyes, though, those hadn't changed. Clear blue, perceptive, guarded. Vivian. He stood, uncertain whether to offer his hand or a hug, settling for an awkward nod. Julian. She sat, placing her purse between them like a barrier. You look different, he smiled faintly. Sobriety suits me better than banking ever did. A flicker of surprise crossed her face. Penny mentioned you changed careers. Changed everything, he corrected gently. I'm sorry to appear suddenly. I wanted to respect your space, but Penny's growing up so fast. I've missed too much already. That was your choice, Vivian said, her voice steady. You walked away. I know, Julian nodded, accepting the weight of her words. I'm not here to disrupt the life you've built or ask for anything you're not willing to give. I just want a chance to be her father again, and to apologize to you properly. The waitress arrived, breaking the tension. To Julian's surprise, Vivian ordered coffee. Some things change, she said, noticing his expression. I don't drink chamomile anymore. As they spoke cautiously about Penny's art and Vivian's expanding business, Julian realized that the woman before him wasn't the same person he'd left behind. She was stronger, more assured. What broke his heart wasn't what he'd lost, but what he'd forced her to become without him. Meanwhile, across town, Penny sat in her school's art studio, paintbrush suspended over canvas, creating a portrait of a family she barely remembered, and wondering if its fragments could ever be pieced together again. Bridges over troubled waters. The evening of Penny's art showcase arrived with unexpected complications. Vivian received the call while arranging the final displays at the Franklin High Exhibition Hall. Penny was having a full-blown anxiety attack in the art room, refusing to let anyone see her work, insisting it wasn't good enough. I've tried everything, said Ms. Hannigan, Penny's art teacher. She mentioned wanting her dad. Vivian's stomach tightened. I'll call him. 15 minutes later, they converged outside the locked art room. Vivian in her carefully selected, dressed Julian in a button-down that still carried creases from being recently unpacked. This has happened before, Vivian explained quietly. When she feels too much pressure. The therapist calls it perfectionism anxiety. Julian nodded, concern etched across his face. May I try? Vivian hesitated, then stepped aside. Penny? It's Dad, Julian called softly through the door. I remember when you were 7, you tore up a drawing because the sky wasn't blue enough. Remember what I told you then? Silence, then a muffled response. That art isn't about perfection, it's about truth. That's right, and your truth matters even when it's messy. The lock clicked. Penny appeared, eyes red-rimmed, clutching a canvas. What if everyone hates it? Not possible, Julian said. But what if they do? Penny insisted. Then they're wrong. Vivian stepped forward, resting her hand on her daughter's shoulder. And we'll get ice cream anyway. Something in this simple united front seemed to reach Penny. Together they helped her prepare for the showcase, Julian hanging paintings while Vivian calmed their daughter's nerves. For a brief, disconcerting moment, it felt almost like old times. The exhibition opened successfully, with Penny's urban landscape series drawing considerable attention. As Julian chatted with art teachers, Vivian found herself cornered by Olivia near the refreshment table. He seems improved, Olivia observed skeptically, watching Julian across the room. Her protective loyalty had been Vivian's lifeline during the divorce. He does, Vivian admitted. Just remember who picked up the pieces, Olivia warned. People don't change their core, Viv. Before Vivian could respond, Marcus appeared at her side, his arm sliding possessively around her waist. Sorry I'm late. Traffic was terrible. His eyes fixed on Julian. Is that him? Marcus, this isn't the time, Vivian murmured. I just want to meet the man I've heard so much about, Marcus said, his usual warmth notably absent. The tension might have escalated if not for Julian being called away by an enthusiastic art collector interested in Penny's work. Vivian watched as he deftly directed the conversation toward Penny herself, ensuring her daughter received proper recognition. "He's certainly charming," Marcus commented. "I see the appeal." "It's not about charm," Vivian found herself saying. "It's about showing up." Over the following weeks, Julian did exactly that, consistently, without fanfare. When Penny needed transportation to weekend art classes while Vivian managed a major client project, he rearranged his schedule. When the Aibo apartment building's pipe burst, flooding Vivian's storage unit containing years of design portfolios, he appeared with dehumidifiers and spent hours helping salvage water-damaged work. Each time he asked for nothing in return, no recognition, no second chances, just the opportunity to be useful. And despite her determination to keep him at arm's length, Vivian found the walls she'd built beginning to develop hairline cracks, just wide enough for questions to seep through. What if people could change after all? And what would that mean for the careful life she'd constructed without him? The weight of forgiveness. The holiday season brought a crisis to Mercer Designs. Vivian's largest client, a boutique hotel renovation worth half her annual revenue, abruptly changed ownership. The new management wanted to revisit all contracts, threatening months of work. "They can't just scrap everything," Olivia insisted over lunch. "You have signed agreements." "With clauses allowing termination during ownership changes," Vivian explained, massaging her temples. "I'd need a financial expert to navigate this." That evening, as Penny helped decorate their small Christmas tree, she casually mentioned, "Dad used to negotiate contracts for his investment firm, right? Before he switched careers?" Vivian paused, a silver ornament suspended mid-air. "Penny, I'm just saying," her daughter shrugged innocently. "He offered to help, no strings attached." After a sleepless night weighing pride against pragmatism, Vivian called Julian. 3 days later, they sat across from the hotel's new management team, Julian's quiet expertise complementing Vivian's creative vision. By meeting's end, not only was her contract preserved, but the scope had expanded to include additional spaces. "Thank you," Vivian said afterward, as they walked through Pioneer Square's holiday market. Snow dusted Julian's shoulders as he stopped to examine a hand-blown glass ornament. "I'm glad I could help," he replied simply. "Your work deserves recognition." "You didn't have to do this," she pressed. "What do you want from me, Julian?" His eyes met hers, snowflakes catching on his eyelashes. "Nothing you aren't willing to give. I'm not the man who left Vivian. That person was lost, selfish. I don't expect you to forget what happened. I haven't forgotten it myself. But I hope someday you might believe people can change." Something in his undemanding sincerity disarmed her more than any grand gesture could have. Later that week, Marcus arrived at Vivian's apartment with theater tickets, his face falling when he found Penny and Julian there, helping install new shelving for Vivian's expanding fabric library. "I thought we had plans," he said, tension evident beneath his smile. "We're nearly finished," Julian offered, sensing the discomfort. "Penny and I can wrap up tomorrow." "No," Vivian found herself saying. "We promised Penny pizza afterward. Why don't you join us, Marcus?" The resulting dinner was a study in awkward civility. Marcus, normally relaxed and confident, grew increasingly stiff as he witnessed the comfortable familiarity between Vivian, Julian, and Penny, inside jokes and shared references from which he was inevitably excluded. "He's still in love with you," Marcus observed afterward, when they were alone. "And you're letting him back in." "He's Penny's father," Vivian countered. "That connection never goes away." "Is that all?" Marcus challenged gently. "Because I'm falling in love with you, Vivian. But I won't compete with ghosts, or with men who aren't actually gone." The question hung between them, unanswered. That night, Vivian found herself standing at her balcony again, watching the snow-covered city. The safe harbor Marcus offered beckoned, predictable, secure, untainted. Yet she found herself wondering about the difference between safety and settling. between forgiveness and foolishness, and whether some broken things, once carefully mended, might be stronger at the seams. Renewed Hearts February arrived with Portland's promise of early spring, cherry blossoms dotting the riverfront where Vivian walked alone. 3 weeks had passed since she and Marcus had mutually agreed to end things, his parting words gentle but resolute. "You deserve someone who has your whole heart, and I deserve that too." The truth had been difficult to acknowledge. While she respected Marcus, something had shifted in her world's axis. Not a simple rekindling of old flames, but a complex recognition that people, even those who had hurt you deeply, could evolve. Vivian's phone buzzed with a notification. Julian had been offered a position running a national financial literacy program for underserved communities. The job would mean leaving Portland. Her chest tightened unexpectedly at the thought. That evening, as she and Penny prepared dinner, her daughter broached the subject. "Dad says he's turning down the job." "What? Why?" Vivian paused, knife suspended above a half-chopped onion. "He said he won't leave us again," Penny replied, studying her mother's reaction carefully. "Even for something important?" Later, Vivian found herself driving to Julian's apartment, questions tumbling through her mind. He answered the door in reading glasses, surprise evident on his face. "You can't turn down that position," she said without preamble. "It's everything you've been working toward." Julian invited her inside, the space modest but warm, bookshelves lined with titles on economics, social justice, and teenage psychology. A far cry from the sleek minimalism he'd once preferred. "Some things matter more," he said simply. "We would have managed," Vivian insisted. "Penny and I have been managing for years." "That's exactly why I'm staying," Julian replied. "You shouldn't have had to manage alone." "I won't make that mistake again." Vivian recognized something in his expression. Not the desperate need of a man seeking redemption, but the quiet resolve of someone who had already found it within himself. "When you left," she said carefully, "I didn't just lose my husband. I lost my belief that anything could last, that anyone would choose to stay when staying got difficult." "I know," Julian nodded, pain shadowing his features. "I can't undo that damage. I can only show you day by day that I've changed." "What if," Vivian suggested tentatively, "you took the job, but we found a way to make it work? Weekly video calls with Penny, holidays together. A different kind of family than we planned, but still a family." The following weekend found them at Penny's regional art competition, sitting side by side as she received second place for her series exploring fragmentation and repair. The artist's statement beside her work read, "Some things break beyond mending. Others break in ways that allow light to enter where it couldn't before." Walking together toward the parking lot afterward, Penny several steps ahead, Julian's hand brushed Vivian's, not grasping, just present. She didn't pull away. "I don't know what this is between us," Vivian admitted quietly. "I'm not ready to call it forgiveness or reconciliation or anything definite." "Maybe we don't need to name it," Julian replied. "Maybe it's enough to recognize that we're both different people now, walking a new path." Ahead of them, Penny turned back, her face illuminated by the setting sun. For the first time in years, Vivian allowed herself to step fully into the present moment, neither hiding from the past nor fearing the future, but simply acknowledging the possibility that some journeys, however broken, weren't finished after all.